You are living inside a financial prison. It was built over 200 years ago. And the most terrifying part is, you cannot even see the bars. To see the cage, you only need to look at two things. First, open your passport. It belongs to a country. It implies sovereignty. Now, open your wallet. Take out a bill. Who does that money belong to? You think it belongs to the government? You think it belongs to the people? That is the illusion. The passport represents your political freedom. The wallet represents your financial captivity. The money in your pocket is not a store of value. It is a unit of debt. And that debt is owned by a private corporation that sits above the law, above the king, and above the Constitution. On the 20th of June, 1815, one man stood in the London Stock Exchange. The fate of Europe hung in the balance. In a single afternoon, he didn't just make a fortune. He effectively bought the title deed to the British Empire. He privatized the national debt of the most powerful nation on earth. In this video, we uncover the genesis block of the global financial system. We explain why central banks are not federal, why they are not reserves, and why the debt in your name is the asset in theirs. This is the story of how a family from a Frankfurt ghetto became the architects of the global ledger, and it all started with a red shield. To understand the mechanism of control, we must travel back to the 18th century, the Frankfurt Judengasse, a cramped, dark ghetto. Here lived a man named Mayer Amschel. He was a coin dealer, a brilliant strategist. Above his door hung a sign, a simple red shield. In German, Rothschild. Mayer Amschel understood a fundamental truth about power. Kings have armies, governments have laws, but both of them need gold, and whoever controls the flow of gold controls the king. But Mayer had a problem. Gold is heavy, it is slow, it is dangerous to move across borders. So, he invented a solution, a human network. He had 5 sons. He didn't keep them at home. He deployed them like arrows. Amschel stayed in Frankfurt, Solomon went to Vienna, Karl went to Naples, James went to Paris, and the most ambitious of them all, Nathan, went to London. They created the world's first financial internet. They built a private courier network, fast boats, fresh horses, carrier pigeons. While the kings of Europe sent letters that took weeks to arrive, the 5 brothers communicated in days. They coded their messages. They knew the price of gold in Paris before the traders in London had even opened their eyes. Information was their currency. Speed was their weapon. And in 1815, they used that weapon to execute the greatest financial heist in human history. The date, the 18th of June, 1815. The location, Waterloo, Belgium. The event, the final battle between Napoleon Bonaparte and the Duke of Wellington. This was not just a military battle. It was a financial binary event. If Napoleon won, the British stock market would collapse to zero. The empire would fall. If Wellington won, British bonds, called consols, would soar to the moon. The empire would rule the world. Every investor in London was terrified. They were blind. They were waiting for the official news. But Nathan Rothschild wasn't waiting. He had an agent on the battlefield, a man named Rothworth. Rothworth watched the battle unfold. He saw the French lines break. He saw Napoleon retreat. The moment the outcome was certain, Rothworth didn't celebrate. He ran. He jumped on a fast horse to the coast. He paid a fisherman a fortune to sail across the English Channel in a deadly storm. He landed in England and rode through the night to London. It was the morning of June 20th. The British government was still asleep. The king didn't know. The Duke of Wellington's official messenger was still hours away. But Nathan Rothschild knew. He had a 24-hour head start on the entire British Empire. So, what did he do? Did he rush to the government and tell them the good news? Did he help the nation relax? No. He went to the stock exchange. He walked to his usual pillar. He stood there, stone-faced, and he gave a signal to his traders. Sell. He started dumping British bonds, thousands of them. The floor traders saw him. They whispered, Rothschild knows. He always knows. Napoleon must have won. Britain is lost. Panic swept the room like a virus. Everyone started selling. The price of the British Empire crashed. It fell 20%, 40%, 80%. The bonds were trading at 5% of their face value. It was a fire sale of a nation. And then, at the very bottom, Nathan gave a second signal. His secret agent stepped in. They bought everything. They bought the entire debt of the British government for pennies on the dollar. Hours later, The official news arrived. Wellington won. The market exploded upwards, but it was too late. The bonds were already in the vault at Newcourt. In one day, the family's wealth multiplied by 20 times. But more importantly, they now owned the government's debt. And in the world of finance, the creditor owns the debtor. This was the moment the central bank model was truly born. It wasn't about storing money, it was about owning the country that prints it. Why did Nathan Rothschild want those bonds so badly? Why risk his entire fortune on a piece of paper? To understand the sovereignty trap, you must understand what a British government bond, a consul, actually is. It is not a loan that you pay off, like a mortgage. It is a perpetual debt. The government never has to pay back the principal. They only have to pay the interest, forever. By owning the majority of the bond market, the family didn't just lend money to the crown. They bought a permanent right to the tax revenue of the British people. Every time an English merchant sold a pound of wool, every time a farmer sold a bushel of wheat, a percentage of that labor was taxed by the king and then immediately transferred to the vaults at Newcourt to pay the interest on the debt. This was the genius of the mechanism. Mayor Amschel had taught his sons a crucial lesson. Lending to kings is risky. Kings can default, kings can die. But lending to governments is safe. Why? Because a government can tax the people to pay the interest. The collateral for the loan isn't gold. The collateral is you. The collateral is your future labor. After 1815, the British Empire became the largest debtor in the world, and the Rothschilds were the creditors. They didn't need to sit on the throne. They controlled the ledger. If the king wanted to go to war, he had to ask the bank for funding. If the parliament wanted to build a navy, they had to issue more bonds. The rule maker wasn't the politician. It was the underwriter. But where do they operate from? Where is the headquarters of this power that sits above the law? It's not in the Houses of Parliament. It is in a place that technically isn't part of Great Britain at all. If you go to London today, you might think you are in the capital of the UK. You are wrong. There are two Londons. There is Greater London, where the people live, where the government sits, where the laws apply. And then there is the City of London. This is the square mile in the center. It is the financial heart of the world, and here is the secret they don't teach in geography class. The City of London Corporation is a sovereign state. It has its own flag, its own police force, its own laws, its own mayor. It is not a borough. It is a corporation that predates the United Kingdom itself. Even the King of England does not rule here. Do you want visual proof? Look at the Temple Bar ceremony. When the monarch wishes to enter the City of London, he must stop at the boundary. He must wait. The Lord Mayor of the city comes out. He presents the pearl sword to the king. The king touches it and returns it. Only then is he allowed to enter. The history books call this tradition. The forensic analyst calls it submission. The sovereign of the nation bows to the sovereign of the money. This square mile is where the Rothschilds established their fortress in 1815. It is an offshore haven located onshore. From this protected citadel, they exported their central bank model to the rest of the world: Paris, Vienna, Frankfurt, and finally, the biggest prize of all, America. The year is 1913. The location, Jekyll Island, Georgia. A secret meeting of the most powerful bankers in America. Their goal? To bring the London model to the United States. They wrote the Federal Reserve Act. They sold it to the public as a way to stabilize the economy. They lied. The Federal Reserve is not federal. It has no reserves. It is a private corporation, owned by its member banks, designed to issue currency as debt. Here's the mechanism, the magic trick that steals your wealth while you sleep. Step 1. The government spends more than it earns. It creates a bond, an IOU. Step 2. The central bank accepts this bond. Step 3. The central bank types numbers into a computer or prints paper to buy the bond. Step 4. The government takes this fresh cash and spends it. Wait. Look closely. Where did the central bank get the money to buy the bond? Did they earn it? Did they mine it? No. They created it out of thin air. But the debt they created, that is real. The government, and you, the taxpayer, now owes the bank the principal plus interest. But if the bank created the principal out of nothing, Where does the money to pay the interest come from? It doesn't exist yet. To pay the interest, the government must issue more bonds. The bank must print more money. It is a mathematical death spiral. It is designed to never be paid off. It is designed to consume the real assets of the nation, land, resources, labor, just to service the interest. This is why inflation exists. Inflation isn't rising prices. Inflation is the counterfeiting fee charged by the monopoly. For 100 years, this system worked perfectly for them. They harvested the wealth of the West. But looking at the recent data, the math has finally broken. The debt has grown so large that the interest payments are consuming the empire alive. The sovereignty trap is snapping shut, and the creditors are preparing for the final foreclosure. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And right now, the rhyme is deafening. Nathan Rothschild conquered England with bonds in 1815. Today, the mechanism hasn't changed. Only the scale has. Look at the United States. The land of the free is now the home of the debtor. The U.S. national debt is not just a number. It is a harvest. It now stands at over $38 trillion. Most people think this is mismanagement. They think the politicians are just bad at math. They are wrong. The system is working exactly as designed. Just look at the scorecard for 2025. While you were distracted by the news, they quietly added $1.5 trillion in net new debt. That is the largest spike since 2022. The total debt is now racing towards 120% of GDP. The parasite has officially grown larger than the host. Remember Mayor Amschel's rule. The goal is not to pay off the debt. The goal is to collect interest forever. But here is the breaking point. For the first time in history, the U.S. government is spending more on interest payments than it spends on its entire defense budget. Think about that. The empire is spending more to service its past debts to the central bank than to defend its future borders. That is the definition of insolvency. That is a mathematical death spiral. When a system reaches this stage, the rule makers have only two options. Option 1, allow the system to collapse and lose their power. Option 2, reset the board. Throughout history, the timeline reveals a disturbing pattern. Whenever a leader attempted to sever the strings of financial control, their tenure, and often their lives, met a sudden, violent end. In 1835, Andrew Jackson became the only president to pay off the national debt. He shut down the central bank, branding them a den of vipers. Shortly after this victory, a house painter named Richard Lawrence fired 2 pistols at him at point-blank range. Jackson survived, but the timing was a chilling warning. Then there was Abraham Lincoln, who dared to print debt-free greenbacks to bypass the bankers' interest rates. He was silenced before the policy could truly take root. And finally, John F. Kennedy. He signed Executive Order 11110, a move that held the potential to strip the Federal Reserve of its power. 6 months later, the motorcade in Dallas turned tragic. Are these merely isolated tragedies? Or do they represent a statistical anomaly too precise to ignore? You decide. So, what is the verdict? We live in a world where we vote for politicians, but we borrow from bankers. The politicians write the laws, but the bankers control the ink. The maxim of the system is simple. Whether Mayor Amschel actually said the words or not, his descendants lived them. Permit me to issue and control the money of a nation, and I care not who makes its laws. You are living inside the red shield. Your mortgage, your student loan, your credit card, these are not services. They are the bars of your cell. As long as you hold their debt, you are working for them. As long as you save in their currency, your time is being stolen by inflation. The debt supercycle that began in 1815 is ending. The math no longer works. The interest cannot be paid. The system is preparing for a great reset. And history tells us that when the banks are insolvent, they don't declare bankruptcy. They declare war. War is the ultimate debt restructuring mechanism. It destroys the creditor's ledger and resets the game. In the next episode, we will expose the second pillar, the business of blood. We will show you how they funded both sides of Napoleon's wars, both sides of the U.S. Civil War, and why they are funding the conflicts you see on the news today. You will understand why peace is bad for business. Do not be the collateral damage in their liquidation sale. Wake up, get out of debt, secure real assets, and most importantly, subscribe. Turn on the notification bell, because the algorithm tries to hide this content. but you found it. Don't let them cut the signal. I am the architect, and we are just getting started.